Welcome back to Gosforth Handyman and another Test Tuesday video. Last week we had a look at the difference in strength between non-biscuited and biscuited joints. Well, this week I thought it would be interesting to put that age-old question to bed. Does it make any difference clamping up a joint? I mean, obviously it does, doesn't it? But have you tested it? As per usual, this isn't going to be a particularly scientific test, it's just for a bit of fun. I'm only testing it with MDF because that's pretty much all I ever use. But let's find out what difference it makes not using any clamping pressure whatsoever on a joint. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to repeat last week's test. Exactly the same testing parameters, same sort of biscuits, same size bits of wood. Everything's identical. The only difference is that in this test, I'm not applying any clamping pressure to the wood. Literally, I'm going to put the joints together, let them dry overnight, and the only thing holding that joint together while the glue dries is gravity. First job, let's get it all glued up and we'll leave it overnight to dry. Right, here we go. We're going to go for the biscuited joint first. Remember, last week we got up to 45.3 kilograms of force on the biscuited joint. This time it's a biscuited joint, but it's not been clamped. It's only had gravity holding it together while the glue has dried. Let's see how it does. Just hand tightened it up to 13 kilos. I'll get the wrench on it. Here we go. That's it gone. I saw 42 kilos there. I will double check later and see what it got up to. We'll try the one with no biscuits next. Right, I've rigged it up again. This is the joint with no biscuit and it's had no clamping pressure whatsoever. So literally these two bits of MDF have had nothing other than gravity holding them together while the glue dries. Here goes. We'll just take up the slack by hand. And remember, last time we got 44.5 kilos of force on the joint that had no biscuit, but it did have clamping pressure. This one hasn't even had clamping pressure. Let's see what difference it makes. Oi! That went quicker than I thought it would, actually. I think that went at about, was it 28 or something? I will double check. There we go, ladies and gentlemen. Read into that what you will. I'm quite relieved, to be honest. I can retrieve my clamps from the bin, if nothing else, and replace them with my biscuit jointer. I'm only joking. The interesting thing here is that with an unclamped biscuit joint, it withstood significantly more force than the unclamped joint that didn't have biscuits. So 42.7 kilos peak load on the biscuited unclamped joint and only 29 kilos on the one with no biscuit. So that's good to know, to be honest, and it confirms what we've always thought, really, that a clamped joint is significantly stronger than an unclamped joint. But if you can't clamp a joint, which is very common when you're making furniture, especially cabinets, and you're making them on site, etc., etc., you might have a biscuited joint or a domino joint, but you can't necessarily clamp a cabinet together when you're on site because you're building it in situ or whatever, and you need to crack on and actually get the job done. The nice thing to confirm is that the biscuited joint is much, much stronger than the non-biscuited joint if we're not using clamps. And to be honest, there's very little in it between the clamped biscuited joint and the unclamped biscuited joint, which, as I say, again, that's good to know, because normally I would just pin biscuit joints with a brad nailer to hold them while the glue is drying. So all good, really. It means that the biscuit jointer isn't destined for the bin quite yet. If I'm making cabinets and I'm using biscuits but I'm not clamping stuff together and I'm just brad nailing it, everything is good. We've also definitely confirmed that a clamped joint is significantly stronger than a non-clamped joint if you're not using biscuits or dominoes or whatever. Once again as well, it's also nice to know that the biscuited joint, even though it's failed, it's still holding together pretty well. So it failed at a much higher load, and I mean, I can break that, and it's broken in exactly the same way as the one last week, so I'll not go into that. Although it's not split the MDF, which is interesting. It's delaminated the MDF inside the joint, because you can see the MDF particles on the biscuits, but it hasn't split the wood. Or it certainly, oh, it has a little bit. It has a tiny, tiny bit, but nowhere near as much as last time. The general consensus: keep using biscuits. They're good for alignment. They do make the joint stronger if it's not a clamped joint. If it is a clamped joint, the biscuit probably makes very little difference. If you can't clamp it, definitely use something like a biscuit or a domino, or if you've got nothing better to do, like you can hand cut a mortise and tenon into MDF, can you imagine? Thank you once again for watching, you lovely, lovely people. Don't forget to hit subscribe if you're new to the channel. Test Tuesday on a Wednesday, only joking. Test Tuesday on Tuesday, and new other videos on a Saturday morning. I shall see you next time. Bye.